So any odd desk in that row, 1 or 3, the yellow sticker. An odd one. So first, third, or fifth in that row. It's up to you. You take whichever one. No, you can sit in the first row if you want. It just has to be an odd desk. No. That's an even row. You got to be odd row, odd desk. Yeah. Yeah. They only get clean once a day. So you don't want somebody's COVID cooties. What's up? Good, thanks. So any desk in that first row to your left, desk 1, 3, or 5. Yeah. No, go ahead. If I trip over it, you guys all have a good laugh. Don't bother me, bro. That's right. It's like I always tell my sophomore and freshman son, I said, if somebody ever rear ends us while we're driving, you're not going to see me move. I'll be like this. Oh, my neck, my neck. So, row 1, seat 1 or 3. What we got left? So seats one, you guys in the first row, it's got to be 1, 3, or 5, not an even number. So then you've got seat 3 in row 1. Media Tuesday. You guys are getting closer to the end here. All right. So as I said yesterday, what we're going to take a look at is we're going to put both of the last two sections together and see how consumers and businesses interact in our system. All right, so you need to understand firms and businesses' production and decisions will help to determine supply. The decisions that consumers make will help to determine demand. Be able to read and understand supply schedules, demand curves, supply curves, demand schedules. Understand the relationship between price and quantity supply. Understand how price and production affect supply, as well as demand. And then we'll talk a little bit about elasticity again, though it's not as prevalent in this unit. All right, so what we did in terms of setting up the last two sections, right? We said to think about it in terms of, go black here, you can see. Think about it in terms of dividing, right, your circular flow model in half. So if we take this, right, and divide this in half, we talked about this the last 2 weeks, right? On the production side, this represents supply, right? Production side represents supply because producers are the ones that provide the goods and services to the consumers on the demand side. So on this side here, when we look at this, right, we know that this is the demand side, and we know that consumers use their dollars to vote for the goods and services, right, that they want. So when we put both of these things together, what you're going to have is equilibrium. All right, so we're going to talk about explaining and diagramming in pictures and words what equilibrium is. And it's basically just putting the last 2 weeks onto the same market schedule and the market curve. So we no longer have a demand curve and a supply curve. So equilibrium price is the price at which demand and supply are equal, right? Everything in the market is thought up. Equilibrium quantity is the quantity at that equilibrium price, and it's very easy to find. It's where the demand curve and the supply curve are going to intersect. All right, they're going to intersect. So we're going to have a couple of different areas on this curve, and you'll see this, it's a lot easier. You're going to have areas of shortage, right? And areas of shortage where the supply is less than demand, you don't have enough. And generally you'll see prices rise during that. So in an area of shortage where the demand is greater than the supply, you're going to see prices, right, soar. In an area of surplus, you're going to have supply outstripping demand, and you're going to see prices drop, right? The same thing, right? When everything was shut down last May, if we take a year ago, right? Nobody's going anywhere, nobody's traveling anywhere. The supply of gas was way higher than the demand. And then what you saw was, right, the price of gas tumbles because nobody's buying it. They want to get it off their hands. And as I said, it's pretty easy to see within pictures. So let me make this bigger. Things that cause, right, a change in demand and supply, consumers' income, consumers' attitudes and expectations, prices of substitute products, prices of complementary products. We'll come back and explain that. And so what I want to show you first is going to be, right, what we're talking about here. So remember, 2 units ago, we talked about demand, right? On the left-hand side is a demand schedule. We know the law of demand says as price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down, right? And you can see that here, right? At 440, only 1,600 bushels demanded. At 280, 2,400 bushels demanded. We take each one of those, right? We take each one of those and we can put that at 440, right? That's how we made our demand schedule. Demand schedule slopes down from left to right because the law of demand says it goes in a different direction. And so what you're going to have, right, is also a supply schedule. So you come here, right? You've got a supply schedule as well. Supply schedule, law of supply says they both move in the same direction, price and quantity supplied. You're going to have a slope up from left to right. And then, as I said, all we're doing is moving this into one schedule there. And so when we make a market schedule, which is what we have here, right? So a market schedule is simply everything put together. Price always going to be on the left. Demanded was the first unit we did. Supply was the next unit we did. At 280, we have 2,400 and 1,600. At $3, we have 2,300 and 1,700. And so now we're going to place 2 points, and that's going to give us both our curves for that. So when we do that, this is what we end up with. So this is your market curve. And as I said, it's going to be very simple, right? We know that this is the demand curve because it slopes down. We know that this is the supply curve, right? Because it is sloping up, right? And each one of these, right? From our supply schedule at 440, we know that there's 1,600 bushels demanded. There are 2,400 supplied. And so basically all this is corresponding points. And then as I said, there's one point on the market curve where these points intersect that supply and demand are equal to each other, meaning that we have none left in the system. So your equilibrium price right here is 360. We just get that, right, from coming straight over. Your equilibrium quantity down here, when you look at that, is going to be, we got 1,800. This is the way. Right. Equilibrium quantity is going to be 2,000. So this here is equilibrium quantity. And that's all that it's telling us, right? Every point on our market schedule, right? So basically all we did was take price, quantity demanded, quantity supplied. You see at 440, right? We have 1,600, and as I said, 2,400. 420, we had, right, looks like 1,700 and 2,300. So each one of these, right, $4, 1,800, and 2,200. And you can go all the way down. But that's how we created that. Any questions on that? So, let's set this. So a couple of things. Let me come back to this. Okay. So when we took and put both supply and demand together and created a market schedule, we've got two different areas, and I'll illustrate this for you in the picture as well. So we've got an area of shortage. We said when we have an area of shortage, that demand is outstripping supply, prices go up. Surplus, right, the condition in which the quantity supplied is greater than demand. Supply is much greater than demand, like last year in terms of gasoline, and prices generally go down during that time period. So what you'll have happen, let's do this for you here. All right, so what you'll have happen is there's going to be different areas that'll be illustrated on. So when demand is greater than supply, right? Demand is greater than supply, we have an area of shortage. In those areas of shortage, or in those times of shortage, right, we know that price is going to go up. And so here, basically, every time, it's never going to change. This is equilibrium right here, right? This is equilibrium quantity. This is equilibrium price. And then your area of shortage is always going to be below equilibrium. And the reason for that is that when you look at this, right, if you draw any point below equilibrium, right, you go all the way here, demand is always going to be greater than supply. Demand is always going to be greater than supply. And then you can say the same thing, right, about the area above. So this area here is always going to be a shortage area. This area here is always going to be a surplus area. And that makes sense, right? The law of demand says that people, right, as the price goes up, are going to demand less, right? This area down here, down. Law of demand, right, says the opposite, right? As the price goes down, demand goes up. And so as you move up, right, as you move up, supply is going to outstrip demand. So when supply is greater than demand, you have an area of surplus. In an area of surplus, we know the price is going to be forced down. And so this is the area of surplus up here, all the way above. Outside of here are two different things that you won't cover until you get to college, if you take this in college. But when you have these areas of surplus and shortage, what you have is basically a force of price. Price is always going to equilibrium. The market is going to work to correct itself. So if you have an area, and that makes sense, right? If you have an area, and let's do it this way. Let's say that you have an area up here. Anywhere above equilibrium, supply is more than demand, right? And that's going to be a surplus. When you have a surplus, price is going down. You're going to have the force of price go down. So that makes sense. Anywhere here, right, where demand outstrips supply, you've got a shortage situation. In a shortage situation, price is going to be driven up. Price is going to be driven up. And so the market is always going to work to try to get back to the middle. So it's a lot easier to see in pictures than anything else in terms of areas of shortage and surplus that you have. Okay, So things that can cause, right, a change in demand and supply. People make more or less money. People's attitudes or expectations change. Same things that we talked about 2 units ago. Prices of substitute products may change. Prices of complementary products may change. That may change supply or demand, right? And then when you have those changes, different things happen. It depends whether demand curve or supply curve is the one that is moving. So again, it's probably easier to see in pictures. As I said, when you have a shortage situation, demand outstrips supply, it's always going to be below equilibrium. Price is always going to be going up. And so that line that's represented by AB shows the price at 320. There's a shortage, right, between the bushels wanted and the bushels available, right? 400 million bushels is the difference. In an area of surplus, if you take the line CD, right, C to D, of course, the price is going down. There is a surplus from 2,300 million bushels to 1,700 million bushels. So there's a surplus of 600 million bushels. Before that thing rots, right, before the bushels of whatever it is, corn, wheat, what have you, goes bad, they're going to drop the price and try to sell it. So when you have these situations, what happens is you're going to have movement. Right? You're going to have movement. So the effects of an increase in demand. Increase in demand generally is going to drive up the price because it's an area of shortage. And you can see this is original demand will mark with D, new demand will mark with D1. And you can see here, right, there's a growing, right, a growing demand for this product. When you have a growing demand for the product, you can see price went up 10 cents. Price went up 10 cents, right? You're just moving right or left. And remember, that's because this is 0, 0. That's 0, 0. So the opposite would happen if, right, demand goes down. So again, if we mark this, this is D, this is new demand D1. You can see that when demand lowers, right, there's fewer bushels demanded, the price is going to drop. Because remember, the force of price is forcing everything towards equilibrium. Forcing everything towards equilibrium. This is what happens if you have supply move. It's a little bit different, but it's the same idea, right? If supply increases, you're going to have movement to the right, same as demand. If supply decreases, you're going to have movement to the left. So if supply increases, supply decreases. We know that that's because 0, 0. Here is original supply. Here is new supply. You can see here, movement to the right. If supply is outstripping demand, you see the price go down. Here, the opposite, when supply decreases, right? That is good for businesses because the price is going to go up. Same thing again here, right? Original supply, new supply, you're going to have movement from right to left because we know that this is the origin. Any questions on that? As I said, the force of price is always going to go towards equilibrium. So it's going to go from top to bottom, bottom to top. And so one of the things that you'll see is, we'll look at this tomorrow, is what happens if the government sets a tariff. So one of the things that Trump did the first couple of months that he was in office was put a tariff on foreign steel. What that does, right, what that does is set a minimum price. Sets a minimum price for a good or service. Keeping that price artificially high, right, prices that are artificially high help the American suppliers. So it helped the American steel industry. That's what tariffs and quotas and things like that do, right? They keep things artificial, right, to help out a certain group of people. But we'll look more about that tomorrow. Any questions on that part? Okay, so. So these are going to be some real examples. This should share up there for you. Turn the volume up. This will give you some real world examples of putting both together.
I'm Mr. Clifford, and this is Adrian Hill. Welcome to Crash Course Economics. Let's start by talking about something that most people take for granted.
Is it grocery stores? Is it the census? Is it GPS? Is it goldfish? Is it frogs? Oh, it's probably these strawberries, right?
No, I was going to say markets.
But strawberries are different.
Yeah, but where do you think strawberries came from?
The ground, the farmer, the market, the grocery store, the miracle of life.
Now look around you. Where did all that stuff come from? And who made it? And why? Well, the answer is simple, but it's underrated. It's market. And for most of us, farms and factories and stores, but mainly it's just market. Kind of struggling now?
So a market is any place where buyers and sellers meet to exchange goods and services. The key to markets is the concept of voluntary exchange. That is that buyers and sellers willingly decide to make a transaction. Let's say you go to a farmer's market and you buy a box of strawberries for $3. You value the box of strawberries more than the $3 you gave up to get it. The seller valued the $3 more than the box of strawberries. The transaction is a win-win because you got your strawberries and the farmer got his money. You both felt better off. That's voluntary exchange. This same process happens in the labor market. Say that instead of the farmer's market, you bought your strawberries at your local supermarket. The cashier voluntarily decided to work there. He values the $10 an hour he makes there more than he does sitting at home watching The Walking Dead. At the same time, the owner of the store values the labor of the cashier more than the $10 an hour she pays him. And so it goes on and on, all the way up the chain of production, from the driver that delivered the strawberries to the farmer that grew the strawberries, to the tractor that the farmer purchased. The point is that markets are everywhere, and most are based on voluntary exchange.
The part of all this that most people take for granted is how efficient the system is. Competitive markets turn out to be pretty great about allocating and distributing our scarce resources towards their most efficient use. So if farmers produce like too many strawberries, then the price will fall as sellers try to sell them off. Lower prices mean less profit for strawberry farmers, and those farmers will have an incentive to produce something else, like lettuce or Brussels sprouts. So if farmers don't produce enough strawberries, buyers will bid up the price, and farmers will have an incentive to produce more, which then drives down the price. And that's like magic, except it's not. The information that markets generate to guide the distribution of resources is what economists call pricing. Markets also incentivize the production of high-quality products. If the strawberries are brown and nasty, then no one's going to want to buy them. And if the tract is a piece of junk, the strawberry farmer is going to tell other farmers to buy some other tract. Ideally, the eventual result of voluntary exchange is that sellers can't make themselves better off without producing something that makes buyers better off. Businesses, in particular large corporations, are often villainized for being greedy, heartless institutions to take advantage of consumers. But if markets are transparent and buyers are free to choose, then businesses will have a hard time taking advantage. Now, obviously, greed and deception happen in real life. And there are situations when consumers don't have a choice. But for the most part, if you really don't like the policies or practices of a particular company, then don't shop there. After all, in the free market, every dollar that is spent signals to producers what should be produced, and how it should be produced.
We've established that prices and profit determine where resources should go. But where do prices come from? Who determines the price of my box of strawberries? To answer that, we're going to draw, get ready for it, supply and demand. Let's go to the runway.
There's only one thing you should learn in economics, it's supply and demand. Let's use the market for strawberries to help us understand this concept. Up here on the y-axis, we have the price of strawberries. Down here on the x-axis, we have the quantity of boxes of strawberries. Let's start by looking at buyers and how they respond to a change in price. If the price goes up for strawberries, then some buyers will go buy blueberries or will go on that all bacon diet. The point is they're going to buy less strawberries. And if the price goes down for strawberries, then people are going to buy more. This is called the law of demand. When the price goes up, people buy less. When the price goes down, people buy more. On the graph, it's shown by a downward sloping demand curve. Now let's think about sellers, like the farmer in the farmer's market. If the price of strawberries goes up, then that farmer will make more profit, so will have an incentive to produce more strawberries. If the price goes down, then he's not going to want to produce strawberries. That's called the law of supply. And on the graph, it's shown by an upward sloping supply curve. Now let's put demand and supply together. If the price is really high at $10, then producers would like to produce a lot of strawberries, but consumers won't want to buy them. This mismatch is called a surplus. And if the price goes down for strawberries, let's say down to $1, then buyers want to buy a whole lot, but producers won't have incentive and they'll produce very little. Again, you have a mismatch, but this one's called a shortage. And there's only one price where the quantity that buyers want to buy is exactly equal to the quantity sellers want to sell. And it's right here where supply equals demand. The price is called the equilibrium price, and quantity is called the equilibrium quantity.
Okay, sure, your graph makes sense, but the price of strawberries isn't always $3. Sometimes it goes up to $6. And at Whole Foods, local, artisanally grown strawberries, the fancy strawberries, can cost upwards of $12. I guess Whole Foods is a whole other world where price has nothing to do with realistic economics. We'll stick to normal strawberries. In fact, the prices for all sorts of stuff change all the time. External forces can shift both the supply and demand curves, changing the equilibrium price and quantity. For example, let's assume that this graph shows the demand and supply of strawberries in the summer. What happens in the winter? Will the change in weather affect buyers' demand or producers' supply? Spoiler alert, it's supply. Colder temperatures make it harder to grow strawberries. The result is the entire supply curve is going to shift to the left. This is because at all possible prices, there would be fewer strawberries produced. That's it. This graph is just a tool that economists and everyone else use to show the results of a change in a market. I know it seems complicated at first, but there are really only 4 things that can happen in a market. Supply can decrease, supply can increase, demand can decrease, or demand can increase. Some people might want to talk about if price is fair or right. Well, that all depends on your point of view. The buyer always considers a low price to be a very fair price, while the seller considers it unfair, and vice versa. In general, economists don't really like to push opinions about prices. Voluntary exchange suggests that the price is there for a reason. For example, assume the demand for strawberries inexplicably falls. So the demand curve shifts to the left and the equilibrium price and quantity fall. Farmers might go to the government for assistance, but most economists would argue there's no reason to bail them out. The market's spoken. Strawberries are so open. Furthermore, if the government helps the farmers by giving them a subsidy, it would be putting resources towards something that society doesn't value. That would be inefficient. Luckily, every reasonable person on earth values strawberries, so they continue to get produced.
And the downside is the supply and demand model only applies to analyzing strawberries. No, I'm just joking, it applies to all sorts of stuff. In fact, let's look at a market for a commodity known for its volatility, both because of its fluctuating prices and because sometimes it's slow. Gas. Now, when you see gas prices moving all over the board, that's just demand and supply. For example, in 2014, the retail gas price in the United States fell dramatically. Why? Those demand and supply. The economies of both Europe and China weakened, which decreased the demand for gas, shifting the demand curve to the left. At the same time, new fracking technology and restored production of oil in Iraq and Libya caused supply of gas to increase or shift to the right. The combination drove gas prices down by more than 40% down. And that's it. Now you can tell all your friends you understand supply and demand. Big day for you. Big day.
So markets and supply and demand are awesome, but sometimes they're not awesome. For example, we don't want to use the market approach when it comes to firefighters. 911, what's your emergency?
My house is on fire. How much you charge to put it out?
It'll be $10,000. What's your credit card number?
They're all melted.
Okay, that one's obvious, but what about the market for human organs? After all, there's a huge shortage and thousands of people die each year waiting for transplants. Should there be a competitive market for human kidneys? A free marketeer would say, sure, why not? If a donor wants $15,000 more than he wants his other kidney, why stop it?
Well, F it. I mean, there's several problems that arise with an unregulated market for human kidneys. First is the moral question. Is it fair for a poor person who can't afford a kidney to die while a rich person lives? Well, probably no, not at all. Another problem results from the law of supply. When there's an increase in the price of kidneys, there's an incentive for people to steal and sell kidneys. In fact, the World Health Organization stated payment for organs is likely to take unfair advantage of the poorest and most vulnerable groups, undermines altruistic donations, and leads to profiteering and human trafficking. I mean, all bad things. So that being said, why do 70% of American Economic Association members support some kind of payment for organ donors?
Well, it's because you can solve some of these problems with the market approach, but the market must be regulated. Often family and friends are willing to donate a kidney, but they're not a match for the patient. Economists generally support creating kidney exchanges, where pairs of willing donors are matched with strangers that agree to donate to each other's loved ones. In both cases, the supply of donated kidneys would increase, which would alleviate some of the shortage. Like we said before, free markets are awesome, but they can't solve all our problems. Sometimes they need to be regulated, and sometimes they should be avoided. So there you have what for most people is the start and for many the end of economics, supply and demand. Economists and politicians often like to refer to the interaction of supply and demand as law, and we've done that too. But be clear, it's not an absolute law, like the law of gravity.
Well, as we try to point out here on the Crash Course, economics is about human choices and their consequences. Even though supply and demand behave in a predictable way that we see in the model, we can't lose sight of the fact that both of them are reliant on humans acting as buyers and sellers.
Our actions influence supply and demand in the way that they can't influence gravity, no matter how much we might want to. Whoa, that's fact. And that's something to keep in mind when you hear us or anybody talking about economic laws. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching Crash Course Economics. It was made with the help of
Okay, so this is very simple in terms of putting both of the last units together. Let's go to, this is the last week of your stock competition. So your last two required trades will be today, and then we'll talk about the case study that we'll do and we'll be done. All right, so group 2 is in first place, $4,200 worth of profit. Group 3 is in second with $2,400 plus in profit. And group 1 is in third, down just about 43 and 26 cents. All right, so still can make that up in a week. With what you have, all right, for your stocks, you want to make a final push. You want to be more involved in terms of what's going up and what's going down. You can see in this one, and I'll have to reset this so that people online can see. All right, so you should be able to see this, but again here, I would this week drop anything that is costing you money. So in this example here of this one that I've kept, all of these things here in the red, I would sell off today. You can see that GameStop, after having gone up last week, making me a bunch of money, now it's lost me $3,000 bucks, right? So I need to drop that and get rid of that. But that would be your first priority within your group, is to drop everything that is costing you money, and then to focus on the possibility, let's stop this, that there is some sort of stock that is going way up today. So we can see about that. So Netflix down $9 a share. Stocks dip as more earnings roll in. So the earnings reports that are coming out from the first 3 months must not be good. Technology shares renewed declines. So anything technology related, you probably want to dump. See if we can see anything that's gaining. So what's the problem with this one? It's so slow. We'll see if it's better here. So let's go to finance. Yeah, it loads better from here. Here, this will show up better. Hopefully that'll show on your screen. So on stock gainers, Arconic Corporation, Great Sale, Litcoin Trust, Gartner Inc., Renewable Energy. So there's some big gainers, right, along the technology and investment side here, right? Right there, you can see you've got some gainers. Big losers, power systems, bio and tech is down, solar energy is down. So I would sell off with your group anything that you are not making money on, as you've got basically until the 7th. And then try to buy something that's going to do well for you. All right, so group 1. All right, so group 1 goes all the way through Gabe. Group 2 is Casey. Okay, so you need to make sure that you make your 2 trades. And those would be the final 2 trades for your competition and project. I should be able to have time to make you, give you time to have trades tomorrow. And then the competition ends on Friday. So make sure you get in your room and make those 2 trades. I think everybody's back. So group 3, you still have one more trade to make, so you want to make sure that you make that. Last thing that I want to go over with you is the case study, the first case study for this week. So next. Sure. All right, so this is going to put both units together, and it'll give you a scenario, then you'll fill that in. So remember that you put your name there, CC yourself a response, but basically it says your uncle's barbecue restaurant is struggling. He's had fewer customers and looking to making some changes on the menu. You heard that there's been, he heard that you've been studying economics and he wants your advice. You research popular food trends in this article. So if you click on that, that article will come up. It won't let me click it because it's not online. But basically, Impossible Foods, known for its meatless burgers, is launching the plant-based pork. Like the Impossible Burger, the plant-based pork is made with soy protein, is designed to look, taste, and cook like real meat. Others will be able to try a sausage version of the product when it arrives at 139 Burger King restaurants later this month. Much of the hype surrounding the plant-based has been focused on beef substitutes, but pork could be the next thing because the industry's ambitions in Asia, where African swine fever devastated the pork supply, people who turned to plant-based beef as a healthier alternative to meat may find meatless pork attractive for the same reason. So it says, according to the article, why might your uncle's restaurant have fewer customers, right? When you look at that, it could be based off of supply. It could be based off of something off of their income. Your uncle wants to add either the greasy pork hoagie or the meatless pork deluxe to his menu. Which of these sandwiches do you suggest he add and why? Your uncle wonders, right? And this is going to be from the point of view of businesses, not the demand or consumers. Your uncle wonders if you should only offer plant-based meat alternatives. What are your dangers of changing your everything on your menu? If producing plant-based meat alternatives becomes extremely profitable, what will happen to the supply and price of meat alternatives in the future? So on that one, right, when you're looking at what happens to the price of both of those, if they become very popular. So when you have a market curve, right, price and quantity, this is demand, right, and this is supply. So basically they're asking you, if it becomes very popular, we know that demand will move to the right, and supply would decrease, right? Because there'd be more people buying it. You can see what's going to happen to the price and what's going to happen to the quantity, right? That's sort of what they're asking. So your uncle is good friends with the farmer that sells him pork and beef. What will happen to the price and quantity of beef if Americans continue to prefer plant-based beef alternatives? U.S. farmers are sending more pork to Asia. How will that affect the price of pork and why? Your other uncle, Edgar, grows soybeans. Given the informative or information in the article, do you expect the demand of soybeans to increase or decrease in the future, and why? Soybean is the very essence of plant-based meat alternatives. And then China recently removed 25% tariff on U.S. soybeans. Is that good or bad news for Edgar, right? So that is one of the things that will be due next Monday on the 10th. Okay, next Monday on the 10th. So group 3, make sure that you make your second trade. You can have the rest of the time to finish that case study, right? Make sure you CC yourself a response and then submit it via Canvas. Tomorrow we'll talk about how production affects supply, price controls and what that does from the government side. We'll give you some examples of that. Do another case study and make sure you're ready for your unit test on equilibrium. All right. Have a good day. If you're online, you can finish that group 3. Make sure that you make your trades. Otherwise, you're going to lose out on half your points this week.
It's not even gonna be that dark. Well, they let you haven't worked about that before, so. Won't you be the coldest day ever?
No, literally. All windy.
Love that.
Right, you got cats flying.
That's so good. The phone was flying everywhere. That'd be horrible. That'd be horrible.
No, literally.
We just get one nice graduation. That's all we got.
I never went to go to prom.
What?
Yeah. I don't know.
Casey's gonna go. You pick up 3 girls. Not just one, but yeah. Just one. Just one. When did you get something? I don't know. It's not someone I'm dating now, so it's people. Exactly. Yeah. No reason not to. You have to. You own it. What's wrong with the group? Not like just a friend. Yeah, me, friend, and then a Kyle. Not like 7 of us who date. Really? It's me, Raj, and Joe, and Nico. Did we get a party bus or? No, we're just driving out there. I thought we were doing that. Everything down there. Right. I feel like going for so much in a bus is kind of restricting on what you can do because they can take you to like one place in a bus. So. Really? Yeah. Or come. That's what I heard. So I know like I don't know what the only thing I get the way after this like area. Like
Mr. Brock,
Yeah.
I rush Raj all the time. Raj asked if you should keep his beard for fun.
Yeah, go ahead.
I came in a little bit late, but I just wanted to make sure that you still got me.
You did.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. On some of the tablets or school tablets, they're having trouble with that article for the first case study. So if you look in that Canvas page again, I just put a direct link to that article if you're having trouble clicking on it in your case study. So it's a short 1.5-minute article.
That would be so funny though. He pulled up and like, yeah, that'd be so bad. Sean. Yeah. What is it? Someone in our boundary track told Noah Turban. No. Extra hard experience. You're gonna call it a bomb project. Yeah. So no premium. No, it's on the ticket. It says it should be burglarized before you buy it. Make sure it's like in no refund if you get caught. So. So you go with Mackay too. Shoot, I'm not sure. Is it a Desmond Salon? I honestly don't know if it's inside or not. I don't even know if it's indoor or not. It's not on selling, but it's, you know.
I just completed our second trade, Grok.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that I had completed our second trade for group 3.
Oh, okay. So let me check. Perfect. Yeah, you're quite. I got 4. I got 4 for your group. Okay, so I'll put that in right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we were watching TV, I was forgetting things, and so I was like, have to get things. Oh, literally, so. And we forgetting things.
What class was it that I had? Where you would just be standing up between you, like wonder why it's so dry and you were hurting. And just one game.
I don't know. I did a lot, to be honest. I just really forget the
What? Everybody should. Oh shit. I'm buying it. Are you buying me those stickers too? Are you buying me those stickers too? No. Really? I'm not good. Oh, it's not good. One was got a pay. No way. I'm just setting my bed. Sometimes I can get the color.